Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be going over how to read notes, and we'll be doing this both in treble and bass clef. So you'll see here I'm doing this in the grand staff. So that's when you would be playing treble and bass at the same time, like on the piano. But I'll be focusing on each clef one at a time just because that's a little bit easier. But this way you can kind of see how they are related to each other. So if we're starting the treble clef, you will have notes both on the line and in between the lines. And we have 5 lines here on the staff. So we can start by looking at the notes that are on the lines. So we have 5, and those would be E, G, B, D, and F. So a good way to remember this is using the phrase, "Every good boy does fine." So if you can remember that phrase, you know to use the first letter of each word to figure out that note. And it's a pretty easy thing to get used to because eventually, once you're really good at this, you won't even have to use the phrase, but it's an easy way just to start getting it in your head. Because there are a lot of notes to memorize, but you really want to have a solid foundation with the notes that are within the main staff. So next, we can move into the notes that are in between the lines. So they would look like this. We only have 4, and these are F, A, C, and E. Now this is really easy to memorize just because it spells out the word face. So if you just remember face, you already know all the notes that are in between the lines. So that's a really easy way. Those are your main notes you have to know for treble clef. But of course, you also have notes that are above and below the lines. So in order to show those in music, we use ledger lines. And ledger lines are just little lines that kind of mimic what the staff would show. But it just helps rather than having the staff be like 10 lines high. It's a lot easier just to read individual notes that might go above or below. So if we start above, normally you would have, say, so if this last note is an E, you would have F, G, and well, normally you could have the G without a ledger line. It would just be the note that's right above the highest line. But then if you want to play an A, which is the next note after G, you would have a little ledger line, and then you would have the A on that little line. So with this, the ledger lines can go as high as you need or as low as you need. And they work the same way as when you're reading notes on the staff. It'll either be on the line or in between lines. So in this case, say we're playing the next note, a B. We'd still have that little line, and then the notes just above it. Now you wouldn't have a line like this. You don't have another on top because it's just extra. You don't want to have too much to be looking at. And then again, if you're playing even higher, you would still have the lower ledger lines. So the next note would be a C. So we'd have the first ledger line that would be our A, and then the next ledger line for our C. So in this space is where our B would be, and then here would be our A. But yeah, so that's how that would look. And it works the same going down below the staff too. So say we're playing here, this is a D. If we want to play a C, we would have a ledger line, our C. Or if we want to play a B, same ledger line, the B is below. Or an A, we'd have 2 ledger lines, the A is on there. So that's kind of how it would look. And you can go super high, super low, same thing. So that's really all you need to know for treble clef. You don't have to worry too much about the notes that are on ledger lines just yet, because they'll come with practice. Once you just really want to be used to the notes that are on the staff. because it'll be really hard to play any instrument if you're not used to that. And then with notes on the ledger lines, just know it goes up either ascending or descending order. So like this is A, B, C, and it goes up. And then here's our D, C, B, A, going down. So those are the main ones you would need to know. Just say 1 or 2 ledger lines above or below the staff. And then anything beyond those, you'll just get used to with time. But when you're first learning the notes, just make sure you know these main ones I've shown already. So now, looking at bass clef, the way notes are written is completely the same. They're either on the line or in between the lines, and you have ledger lines, everything like that, except the notes are a little different. So if you look here in treble clef where we have our E, in bass clef, the note there is not an E, that would be a G. So, oops, that's a little weird, a G. So we can start by going over all the notes that are on the lines again. So we have G, B, D, F, and A. So a way you can memorize those is good boys do fine always. So it's pretty similar to what we used for treble clef, but that's probably the best way to get to know it. And you can always find out your own acronyms you want to use, just whatever makes it easier for you. So for me, I don't really use this little phrase to know the notes that are on the lines. I just kind of go by the notes that are in between the lines if I get stuck really quick. So those notes that are in between the lines we have here, and those are A, C, E, and G. So say I forgot the B, and B would be here. I know, okay, well, this is an A, so B would be the next one. So you can just do whatever is easiest for you, but then a good way to remember those notes is all cows eat grass. So that's pretty helpful. Again, it's not as easy as memorizing face, which you can use for treble clef, but it's still a nice little phrase just to memorize for when you're getting used to everything. And sorry, things are getting a little bit crowded. But now we can go into ledger lines again. So if we're going up again, there's our G. So now we have A, B, and then our first ledger line is a C. And then I'll just show the next few notes. D and E. Or going down, we have our G, F, E, D, and then that should be enough for now. And then something I just want to point out, which kind of made it easier for me to understand the relationship between treble and bass clef, is when it's written like this. Let me just move everything real quick. When it's written like this and for the grand staff, we actually have the note that connects them, which is C. So, like I was showing before when I was showing the lower, the notes on the lower ledger lines for treble clef, you'd have, say, D right here, and then you have C. And then if you're going into bass clef, the note on top of the highest line is B, and then A. But so the C, the middle C, is what kind of connects them. So there you can kind of see how treble and bass kind of overlap. So that's not as important if you don't need to know both clefs. So if you're playing an instrument where, say, you only need to know treble clef, then that's not as important, but it's still something pretty helpful to kind of keep in mind. But yeah, so I'd say that's all you really need to focus on right now. That's the main stuff to cover. So yeah, good luck memorizing everything, and I hope that helps.